Hi, I'm Drew.
I'm Scott.
Welcome to Every Man's Whiskey.
We are very excited. We are on location where bourbon happens in Louisville, Kentucky at Rabbit Hole.
So, we're excited to see what they got. They invited us. We came.
Why wouldn't we?
Let's go try it out.
Welcome to Every Man's Whiskey, Season 2, Episode 2. We could not be more excited than we are today to be on location at Rabbit Hole Distillery in Louisville, Kentucky. We've got Drew, as always, and a special guest, Adam, who's been kind enough to bring us into his house, really, take us on a tour, and we're about to have some great tastings. But before we jump in, Adam, tell us a little bit about what you do here at Rabbit Hole.
So my name is Adam Edwards. I'm the digital brand ambassador for Rabbit Hole Distillery, which... what is that, right? So that's a really unique title. Actually, I've never met another digital brand ambassador, so I kind of feel like I'm pioneering. Yeah, it does, right? Yeah, I'm really making that one up. I actually don't work here at all. They just pulled me off the street. So I really, I handle a lot of media. I talk about bourbon for a living, which is just awful. It's just the worst thing to do. But I really, that's really the crux of my job, is I just get to talk about Rabbit Hole bourbon 24/7 if I wanted to. Like, if I wanted to do it all day long, they would let me. Get to walk around the distillery and see different cool things that are happening that I only understand about 90% of them. That 10% I don't understand. It's really hard. That's a hard one to get around. But yeah, I just have a lot of fun doing what I do. I'm a lucky guy.
That's awesome. Tell us what we're going to sample today.
So we're going to sample bourbon and whiskey. Bourbon and whiskey with a little gin thrown in, right?
Yeah, we do have we don't normally sample gin, but we could not.
This will be our first gin.
Yeah, it's not your normal gin, so that's good.
There we have it. Let's jump right in.
Excellent. So let's start with Cave Hill.
Okay.
Here on the far end there. Now this is a 4-grain Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. This is our flagship. This is really the one that started it for Rabbit Hole. What's amazing about our bottles is when you look at the label, we let you know what's in there. And so we have the mash bill of this bourbon right on the label. It is 70% corn, and then 10% each of malted wheat, malted barley, and then honey malt. So honey malted barley. And we'll get really nerdy with it. We'll get really deep. But before we do that, we're going to do something that I always like to do. I feel like you can learn a lot about somebody if you ask them what they do for a living or what their hobbies are, but you don't really know somebody until you had a drink with them.
There you go.
I like
cheers.
that.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for having me over.
Yeah.
All right. On the nose, we get that classic caramel and oak. Getting some char in there, some ethanol. Tasty. Okay, let's go in. That's just delightful.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
So our process, Adam, is typically we'll look at the appearance, consider the nose, the taste, and kind of most importantly for us, the value. Every Man's Whiskey is stuff that folks can want to spend their money on, and so sometimes it's the lower end stuff, sometimes it's the higher up premium.
Yeah.
But this is phenomenal.
Yeah, this is tasty. So,
tell us what we're tasting.
So I always kind of get, and you'll have to forgive me, I come from the wine world. That's where I really started my career. And so I always think of like a progression of flavors. And so I always get right up front on this. I get a ton of honey on the nose. That honey is super strong to me. And when you kind of think about the mash bill, there's no rye. You see wheat, and you think wheated bourbon. I really don't consider this a wheater. I just don't. The honey malt is really the secondary grain, that kind of flavoring grain or small grain. Like, you get a ton of it up front, but when you taste it on the palate, the spice is right there. First thing, tons of barrel spice, lots of clove and allspice and cinnamon even. And then as it moves across the palate, I get a lot of kind of green fruit. So green apple and pear kind of lift up a little bit. And then it finishes kind of sweet, more of that honey and vanilla and maple. What I love about Cave Hill, and you'll probably hear me use this word a whole bunch, is balance. Right? Balance is the name of the game at Rabbit Hole. And Cave Hill's a really good example of that because you start one place and then you go through a bunch of different flavors and then you end up somewhere else that balances it, right? So you start with spice, you get acidity, and then you get sweetness. And those three things really support each other and they kind of move it forward.
What are you getting, Drew?
So, it's decently heavy on the vanilla, hint of caramel. The maple I am really enjoying. The honey, after you said that, I'm like, that's what that was. Yeah. It's I do love the smell. So.
I've been sitting with the finish for a minute. The sweetness, but also some of the spice that lingers is really enjoyable. It's solid.
Well, I think it's important to have both of those, right? I don't know. It's isn't that a Kevin Smith movie? I think it's like Mallrats, where he's like, you can't have the sweet without the bitter, and you can't have the bitter without the sweet. You know what I mean? Those sorts of flavors, they complement each other and they lift each other up. And so that's what I really like about this one is that it has the spice, but it has the sweetness. And the finish is crazy long on this.
Yeah, it is.
Which is really surprising, you know? I mean, it really is a really long finish, and we just really owe that to the barrels. The barrels are big flavor for this, right?
They did their job.
All right, let's move on. For our next tasting today, we're going to the High Gold.
Your high rye bourbon. As Drew pours this, you are our guest fact giver today, and would love for you to share with us. Drew and I just got to experience an impressive tour of your distillery. Tell us a little bit about the distillery and what folks can expect if they come here for a tour.
So our tour is pretty unique. Great thing about our building is it's very transparent, right? And so,
Literally,
yeah, I mean, it's literally transparent, right? And so when you're walking through that space, you really get a great sense, as Kave says, our founder, I love this phrase, from soup to nuts. You see it from grain to glass all the way through. And I think that's really enjoyable for people to actually get to walk in, see the fermenters, walk up and like experience that close up and touch them and taste the mash if they want. You get nose to nose with our still. Even at the top, right, which is called the rectifying part of the still. I have been to so many distilleries. I've never been to another distillery where you get that close to that part of the still. And you can see, I mean, we were looking at it, right? Roll that beautiful bean footage, I guess, is you can see the water recondensing at the top of that still. And then you can even see the alcohol vaporizing and kind of popping off those bubble caps of one of the plates there. And then after that, you get to go up to overlook an incredible rooftop bar, enjoy a tasting up there, grab a cocktail, and just see the best view of the city of Louisville in Louisville.
Incredible architecture. We're blown away just pulling up to it. And you've done your fair share of tours, Drew. What did you think?
Yeah, definitely. It's a very impressive tour. Just everything about it was really, really well done. I mean, the first thing that you get when you show up is a cocktail in your hand. What's not to love about that?
Gets everything off to the right foot.
Exactly. All right. So we've got the high rye on here, so I'm expecting a lot of rye on the nose. Sure enough, that's one of your favorites, isn't it?
I like it, but it's not overwhelming. We've tasted this before, and we came to that conclusion, right?
Yep. Okay. You know, for not being a rye lover, it's a really, really really good high rye bourbon. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean it's not a true rye, so it's not maybe probably why you like it better than
right.
He's not, you love rye.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the big thing about this is the rye. It's not just rye; it's malted rye, and so the grain itself is malted, and it kind of takes some of that classic green and spicy and earthy and herby notes, and it dials it down a little bit, and it relies a little bit more on the barrel to kind of give some of those sweeter flavors. So it's still there. I mean, you can really find a little bit of those spicy notes on there, but for me, I think the toasted element comes out stronger than anything on this
the finish for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Toast.
So you still get that little bit of the caramel, the toasted oak right on the back, and it lingers really nicely, which is what I'm really appreciating about this one.
Fantastic.
Delightful. Let's try some more. For our next tasting, we're going to a new one for us, the Boxer Grail.
Got to imagine I'm excited about this.
This one is 95% rye.
How you feel about that, Drew?
I'm here.
It's a classic mash bill 95.5. You don't love it already?
As you pour that for us, Drew, Adam, can you tell us? We've seen that Rabbit Hole partners with a ton of different craftspeople to bring your product to life, and aspects of that are really unique. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, we really love a lot of our partnerships. One of them, we have these great cigars, by Diesel. I'm a big cigar smoker. I love cigars, but Diesel just makes this great Whiskey Row series for us for the age. Some of the wrappers are aged in Cave Hill barrels. Some of the wrappers are aged in Pedro Jimenez sherry casks that we use to finish the Derringer. But I think that our greatest partnership is and will always be Kelvin Cooperage. Mm-hmm. We love them so much that we shout them out on the bottle. We actually put their seal on every single label because they're incredible. Not only are they toasting and charring every single one of our barrels, right? They're doing so over oak fires. They actually take a lot of the leftover oak wood and build it underneath these grates and put the barrels right on top. And they've even told me, they get into specifics such as, they'll get it up to about 500 degrees and they'll let it sit there until it, combusts, or like we say in Kentucky, catches on fire. As soon as that barrel catches on fire on the inside there, it's gone from toasting to charring. And there's so much flavor development that happens between those two processes. I have yet to see a barrel come in that there's been something wrong with the barrel. Maybe a stave every once in a while have a little leak on it. We send it right back to give us a new one right away, right? They're such great artisans of their craft that they produce such fantastic barrels for us. You got to think of it like a chef. If you don't have amazing ingredients all the way through building your menu, you're not going to have an amazing meal. So every single product that we use, every single grain, every single barrel, everything has to be top notch, and Kelvin is just killing it for us every single day.
That is awesome.
Nice. All right, so 95% rye, 5% malted. Okay.
I feel like you mentioned that, Drew.
I'm trying to, All right, here we go. On the nose, super, super rye heavy.
I think it smells amazing.
Let's dig in. That is it's definite rye bourbon. Can you go a little bit deeper into the ryes that you use and stuff?
Absolutely. So we just tried High Gold, and then now we're doing Boxer Grail, and they both have rye in the mash bill. Now High Gold is the malted rye. That one comes from Germany. That's a German grain. Whereas this grain is unmalted and comes from Canada. So we use completely different grains. The reason being is because we wanted these to be completely different spirits. Now, I always tell people this, if somebody tells you they're not a rye drinker, this is a great rye to give them because it does not act like your normal 95.5 rye. 95.5 rye is a very famous rye mash bill, right? So MGP, huge distillery, obviously. A lot of people get their product from them, create a 95.5 rye that is award-winning. Cave didn't want to source. We didn't want to source our whiskeys. But his mentor worked at LDI or MGP for a long time. His name's Larry Ebersold. He is a genius, to put it lightly, and a real legend in rye whiskey and American bourbon. And he loved that 95.5. Cave loved that 95.5 that Larry produced, so he made his own. And where I think it differs for us are those Kelvin barrels. Again, the toasted element, it kind of brings off a little bit more of the barrel spice that takes over what the rye spice usually is. I mean, I'm with you. Like, you smell this, it's definitely rye, right?
Right.
But there's so much more caramel and vanilla and sweeter tones that you don't get on your normal 95.5. And here's where this one doesn't have, and I kind of talked about it a little bit with High Gold. Boxer Grail doesn't come at you with a ton of mint and dill, and black pepper. The black pepper is there kind of on the finish. I really think the nose is just rose water and pipe tobacco to me. It is super aromatic. And I always say this note, I wait until you drink it before I say this, but Can you find the black tea on the finish? This awesome kind of black tea note back here.
Black tea.
You're a tea guy.
I am
You
a
love
tea
tea.
guy, but
I
I'm
find
not.
it really strong on this one.
Here, let's.
Focus in, Drew. You get the black pepper for sure.
Yeah, right at the very end. But then that.
I don't know if it's just my head, but like right after the black pepper,
You think that's what it is?
black tea.
I think
Black
the black tea is the most lingering flavor. Me personally. Now,
Yeah.
I don't expect everybody to get that. And batch to batch, right? We're always doing 15 barrels or less at Rabbit Hole. Batch to batch, you get a little variation in the ratios. I will say this bottle of Boxer Grail that we're doing has a little more spice on it than the last bottle of Boxer Grail I had, right? But Boxer Grail there's always sort of this tea note that shows up in a lot of our products. A lot of that is from the yeast that we use. I think it's super strong on Boxer Grail.
If you tried this and you taste the black tea or don't, comment below and let us know if Adam's crazy or if Drew's just an idiot and doesn't really know anything about tea,
There you go.
which is very possible. Either
Thanks,
way,
Scott.
I enjoy ryes a lot, and I don't. It's not like the classic rye. I feel like there's nuance to it, and the flavors are phenomenal. Did you like it?
As far as ryes go, I've only had a few, pure ryes, and this is definitely probably I would say this is the best rye that I've had.
High praise
I'll
from
take
Drew.
it. Yeah, I'll take it.
For talking
Yeah.
about rye, so that's a win for sure, Adam.
There you go. I'm excited about the next one, so we're gonna jump over to that guy. So we're switching over. This is the first time that we're not sampling whiskey.
I feel like I'm cheating.
A little bit, but it is barrel aged. So we're trying their bespoke gin. How long is this barrel aged for?
This is only done for anywhere between 6 to 9 months.
Okay.
Sometimes as little as 3, sometimes as much as 12. We were kind of passing by that sensory panel earlier. We taste everything, including the finishing projects. We don't want to put just a round number on something. If we're going to finish it, we're going to taste it, because every barrel is so different that sometimes it only takes 3 months. Sometimes it takes 11, 12 months. But generally, we're finding like 6 to 9 months in here for bespoke.
And you recently kicked off a marketing campaign, 1 barrel, 2 distinct spirits. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, we've talked a lot about barrels, which I feel like you have to when you're in a distillery, right? The barrels are so incredibly important to us. We want to kind of keep it going. So we take the barrels that we age the Boxer Grail rye whiskey in. After we empty those barrels and send that product on for bottling, we take those barrels, we take a London dry gin, and we proof it down to about 95 proof. We put it in those barrels, and then we let it age for about 6 months. So you can see the color there is taking it from that barrel. And in fact, if you're within our DTC area, which is like Kentucky, I think maybe Indiana, some random states like Alaska and Utah or something, you can actually order the bottle of Boxer Grail, the bottle of Bespoke on our online store, and you get this cool stave with 2 glasses with it. And you can sit there and do fun tastings with others with it. But I will tell you, I'm from Kentucky, so of course I'm not a gin person.
Yeah.
Except when I started drinking Bespoke. And the reason we name it Bespoke is because we bespoke tailored this gin for the American whiskey drinker. I think you're going to be shocked when you try this, how good it is.
Let's give it a try. Do we typically know?
Oh, yeah, just like
okay.
whiskey. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Never. This is new.
I know. Yeah. So
And I'll show you a really cute trick after this.
Okay,
so go
fair
ahead.
enough.
Yeah.
So definitely getting the juniper from the gin, getting the whiskey notes. Really, the hint of vanilla, hint of caramel. I mean, granted, it's a hint because the juniper is decently overpowering, but it smells fantastic. Okay, I'm gonna go in. Really smooth.
Yeah, after having the prior tastings, going to a gin might be part of it, but that is so smooth.
Yeah, here's a descriptor you don't get a lot with gin. Creamy.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
It's really the lipids coming out of that barrel just really make this very creamy. I will show you a neat trick. I love doing this. So take the rye whiskey and really nose that rye whiskey. I call it filling up your snoot. Really get a snoot full of it, right?
Is that the technical term?
It's the technical term. Yeah, I've got a lot of training for that.
Snoot is filled.
All right, so now go to the gin right away and smell the gin, and surprise, surprise, it smells like gin, right? You get like Christmas trees and pine trees and juniper, right? So now reset your sense. So smell like the inside of your elbow, your forearm. You're using your own pH to reset your sense of smell. Now smell the gin again and see how sweet it is.
Wow.
What you basically did, you basically nose blind yourself to that rye barrel, right? Because you really fill up on it. And then when you go to the gin, you don't smell the rye because you basically nose blinded yourself to it. And you're just smelling the gin spirit, which is, it's a London dry gin. It's a lot of juniper, right? There's some like rosemary, orange peel, tea leaves in there, a couple other aromatics. But then when you reset and you go back, you really see what that 6 to 9 months does to it. And it really, I personally think this smells and tastes like limoncello and Earl Grey tea. I think the tea note even kind of comes back over onto this a little bit more.
How often in a day do you sniff your own arm?
Oh man, a lot. Honestly, it's very strange. Kind of a lot. It's just the nature of the job, I guess.
That's an awesome question.
It's very easy to drink.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, like I wouldn't even need this as a mixer.
No, typically I don't think of drinking gin on its own.
Who does?
Right.
Think of it this way. This is, let's be honest, a cocktail spirit that we're drinking warm, room temperature, neat. Right? You shouldn't be able to do that with gin. I think it was Forbes magazine. In 2018. They named this the best gin to drink neat in America, which is a very weird award. But
it's a little niche, but
it's very 100%
like
on the nose. Yeah. So we're always really proud of this, and especially doing it with the rye. You get that. I love the name of that campaign, the one barrel, two distinct spirits, because it's really true. You're getting two distinct spirits that share that one barrel. We talked a lot about sustainability. There's one thing that's not very sustainable in American whiskey, especially when you're making bourbon, is you're using that one barrel just once and then you're moving it on, right? It's going off to other things. For this one, we're getting two really great uses out of it. Really great uses out of it.
What do you want to mix this with, though, Drew?
What would I mix this with?
Martini? What are we talking?
Yeah, probably martini. Just a hint of dry vermouth. I'd probably skip the olives though. So I think just a little bit of dry vermouth with that would be absolutely beautiful.
No olives necessary.
Yeah, you can do cocktail endings with this. Is actually really good.
I can see
like
that.
the olives. Yeah. My wife came up with this great drink, and let me preface this by saying my wife is a Moscato drinker. She drinks sweet wine, and she's just not a bourbon fan. No matter what I do, doesn't happen. And she actually really loves this gin. She does it with club soda and an orange slice. We call it a Rabbit Ricky or a Ricky Rabbit, like a gin Ricky. It is dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's really good.
I can see that.
Fantastic.
I'm excited about the next one because it's my personal favorite. So let's get to it. For our final tasting today, we're going to one of my personal favorites, the Derringer.
So dang good. We've had it before in season 1, and it was literally Drew's favorite, as we learned in our recap episode 20 of season 1. But I've never had it after trying gin, so we'll see how this goes.
What a progression.
As we do that, one of the things that I've loved about Everyman's Whiskey and the journey that Drew and I have been on are the stories behind the whiskey and the bourbon, and just the rich history of whiskey. And Rabbit Hole is it's not old, but it's got a ton of rich stories within. So I wanted to ask you, Adam, what's one of your favorite stories behind the brand Rabbit Hole?
So you're right. There's so many great things. The bottles themselves have all these amazing stories about the labels, right?
Cave story is
Cave story is
we talked
incredible.
about that in season 1.
I was kind of talking on the way over here. We were walking over here about how I have had this kind of career-altering moment in my life while I was drinking Derringer. And so every time I kind of smell Derringer, it takes me back to that moment too. But my favorite Rabbit Hole story is about how Derringer sort of came about. It really is. So it's great timing. It's like softballs. Just throwing them at me. It's great. So Derringer is all about love. This one is really about love. And the reason it's about love, Cave, before he discovered bourbon, he was a big Scotch drinker, right? And he loved sherried finished Scotches. So he meets Heather, who is from Louisville, and she turns him into a bourbon drinker and then like drastically overshoots the mark. Just like really overshoots it. And they move down here to Louisville after they get married. And after a while, he's just so passionate about bourbon, and he's kind of making it off to the side, and he, after a while, decides to open the distillery. And he decided, hey, why can't I take something from my old life, that idea of finishing a whiskey in a sherry cask, and do it to American whiskey, right? So take a bourbon, take a wheated bourbon, and finish it in those Pedro Jimenez sherry casks, which is not easy. Pedro Jimenez is very, very rich, right? It's very, very rich. And we learned very early on that you can't just put a number on it. You can't be like, this is going to be 6 months and that's it. Sometimes it's too much. Sometimes it's too much. Depends on the barrels that Casnolia, the sherry producer, and Cooperage are sending to us. Sometimes it only needs like 3 months in there and it's done. But when you think about that story, about how it came about and how it's about the love, she introduced them to bourbon, and then you sort of nose sherry, it makes a lot of sense. It really does when you sort of think about that story of love and then go straight into the bourbon.
You can smell the love.
You really can. Wow. It's like sweet and strong and heady.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
amazing.
Awesome.
You smelling love?
For this one, heck yeah. I know you are.
Absolutely.
We've had this before. Let's just dive in and enjoy it, Drew.
Here we go.
Come on.
Still fantastic.
It's everything you want. It's
It
creamy. Is. You've got the spices going on, the sherry.
Mm-hmm. Plus, you got all those bourbon flavors that you just come accustomed to and want anyways. So it's truly a beautiful, beautiful beverage.
It is a phenomenal spirit, and I'll tell you, it's so rich and deep. Depth is one of my favorite words in the spirit industry, because depth, I think, it's like an onomatopoeia. It really sounds like what it is, right? You get like full depth all the way down the palate from something. And when you like nose and taste Derringer, this is something people don't talk about a lot, are finishes on the nose. You think finishes on the palate, but you can go into Derringer and you smell the sherry right away, and then you take the glass away, you get the barrel. And I mean, how important is the char of a barrel and toasting the barrel? I mean, I put a box up here filled with barrel char because it's so important for flavor. You take that and you stick it in your smoker, right? You're going to get really great flavor out of it. It's the same thing with Derringer. Both barrels are adding such incredible flavor and depth of flavor to this. You can just go for 2 hours talking about like the depth of flavors in this, right?
And the craft that goes into it with the folks in Spain that you partner with to get this done and come together to make such an amazing final product. So good.
Absolutely beautiful. And this particular one is it's a lot more sherry and creamier than the bottle that I have at home. And I actually really appreciate how, since you guys do small batches, then there is a slight variation from one bottle to the next. So
yeah, I mean, people do batching most places for consistency, and we do the same thing, but there's a level above consistency, and that's quality. We're more focused on the quality of each batch than we are consistency, because the grains are always going to give you consistency. If you're doing a 95.5, there's only so much that you can do to change it to make it not taste like a 95.5, right? If you're doing a 4 grain with honey malt, that's always going to show up that honey malt, right? But from batch to batch, you're going to get different flavors. And when you're doing, or different ratio of flavors, when you're doing 2 barrels like that, it's kind of just, it's exponentially greater the number of flavors that you'll get in variance in those ratios.
Yeah, excellent. So, Adam, thank you very much for having us today. We really appreciated the tour, the tasting. We never would have tasted this gin without you. So that alone is just, phenomenal.
And the fact that, we had an episode on Rabbit Hole, and you reached out really quickly and commented on it and invited us down here. We're not a huge operation at this juncture, so it means a lot to us. Absolutely. So appreciate your time, and we've enjoyed everything we've tasted.
Absolutely. Definitely.
Our tradition is to toast at the end of every episode with our favorite of what we've tried. And no surprise, Drew, your favorite is?
Derringer.
I concur, although I would encourage folks to definitely try the gin. It's really good. It's just not whiskey.
Yeah.
And what are you going with?
I'm going with Boxer Grill.
Oh,
It's a great rye whiskey.
it is a great rye whiskey. It's really good, Drew.
Yeah. Hey,
And that black tea.
it was the best dry whiskey
different
I've ever had.
Yep. And it's our tradition to toast to this. So anything you would like to toast to?
Yeah, new friends.
New friends.
Indeed.
I like that. There you go.
As always, we encourage you to like, subscribe, comment below on your thoughts on the episode, questions you might have.
And remember, quality over quantity.
Drink responsibly. From all of us at Everyman's Whiskey, we would like to thank Rabbit Hole Distillery for having us down to Louisville to check out their amazing facility. The tour of the distillery and the experience was truly amazing. If you're near Louisville or plan on making a trip nearby, we highly recommend booking a spot on the tour. Be sure to plan ahead. We'd especially like to thank Adam Edwards for showing us around the distillery and joining us on our episode. Adam, we're glad you reached out to us early this year when we made a mistake on our first Rabbit Hole video in Season 1. It was definitely the best mistake we've made all year.